What's up, y'all? Back again today with a very special video. So today I wanted to talk about a few comments that I received on one of my videos in particular, and I wanted to label this video the Trayvon Martin effect. So if you live in America, I'm sure you're aware of a gentleman that was by the name of Trayvon Martin. If you're not, let me quickly explain. So Trayvon Martin, a few years ago, was a young black American boy who, when I say boy, he was not yet an adult, so he was still a child, who was walking in his neighborhood, and he had just came from the store, and he was wearing a hood, which we know is a lot of times on sweatshirts and sweaters and jackets. They have hoods to protect you from either the rain or the cold or to keep you warm. So this gentleman was wearing a hood, and someone who lived in the neighborhood felt as though this gentleman, Trayvon Martin, posed some sort of threat, or he was somehow suspicious. So he took it upon himself to create an altercation between himself and Trayvon Martin, and what ensued was Trayvon Martin was murdered. Now, I'm not here to talk about the particulars of the case. I'm not here to talk about the suspect, George Zimmerman. I'm not here to talk about the ruling of George Zimmerman being innocent in the stand your ground law. I'm not here to talk about the fact that George Zimmerman sold the gun that killed Trayvon Martin, and it was sold for thousands upon thousands of dollars. I'm not here to talk about any of those things, but I am here to talk about the effect that this occurrence had, and the stereotype and the mind frame behind people who are afraid of black people. And that's just how I have to say it, because sadly that is the truth. There are a number of people who, because of their own personal misconceptions and fears, whether it be through indoctrination, propaganda, or lack of interaction, they have come to the conclusion that somehow black people must be feared or are somehow suspicious or somehow pose a threat. So I want to read you a few comments on a video that I made. But first, I want to explain the video. So if you go back and watch one of my videos titled Thug versus Store Owner, basically this was a video in which I was standing outside of the laundromat where I was washing my clothes at. A gentleman from the store adjacent to me, where I was at, came outside of his store and screamed at me from his store that I need to get away from the area because I look like a thug. Now, at the time, it was daytime and it was raining. Again, you can go back and watch that video. It was raining, and I had some scarf on my head to protect my hair from the rain, and I had my hood on because it was cold. So the gentleman said that I look like a thug based on my appearance. Now, when you watch that video, you'll see what happened. So I'm going to read you the comments, two particular comments that I received on that video right now. You know exactly what a hoodie represents today. How many store owners have been robbed, killed by individuals that walk into their store wearing hoodies to try and conceal their identity? All of these store owners are on edge because of what they face on a daily basis. Someone who has worked his whole life, done without, and saved enough money to open his own store, only to have thugs show up and steal from him. He was only trying to protect what was his. Maybe he did judge you, but by what you were wearing. You can't blame him. Why don't you visit his store again, but next time wear a t-shirt and bring your son with you. Introduce yourself and your son, and I can assure you he will respond much differently anytime you visit his store in the future. Try it one time and make a video of it. As a Latino white American, I'm so sorry you are frustrated. You are right. People should not discriminate against anyone for how they talk, walk, dress, or color they are. Really, the issue may be he had bad experiences with people who dress and look and talk like you, so they think you're just like them. Remind them you're different and you understand. I'm so sorry. This nearly brought me to tears. God bless us all. Amen. Now, you heard both of those comments, and I'd like to address both of those shortly and explain to you how the Trayvon Martin effect is in place here. Now, the first gentleman asserted that I should know, or he assumed and told me that I already know what a hoodie represents in today's society. Now, sir, I must address you personally. You cannot assume that I know anything. Additionally, I do not know what a hoodie represents in American society. I can assume what a hoodie represents in American society, and I can also tell you what a hoodie is made for, the purpose of a hoodie. So what I know the purpose of a hoodie is for is to keep you cold and protect you from the rain, which is why I was wearing it. Now, what you said is that I should already know what it represents, and this is where I have to bring in Trayvon Martin into this whole equation. Now, what you truly mean by what it represents is that I know what it is that is associated with black men wearing a hood. And yes, you're actually right. I am aware of the associations made of a black man wearing a hood. And as you asserted, the assertions are that I'm going to rob someone, I'm going to kill someone or hurt someone or cause someone danger, because there are a number of black men wearing hoods who do this. Now, there are a number of errors in your comment, and I can't necessarily address them all, but the main concern that I wanted to address to you and anyone who shares this mind frame is what you're saying is basically incorrect. And not only is it incorrect, it's disrespectful. Not only is it disrespectful, it's demeaning, it's belittling, it's ridiculous, it's preposterous, it's outlandish, it's ludicrous, it's asinine, okay? The fact that I, as a black man being the particular keyword in that sentence, I as a man have to, as you asserted, take my son with me everywhere I go, or dress in maybe a polo shirt or dress in a business suit, or in this particular case, not wear my hood in the rain and let the rain fall on my head just because other people may be scared or assume that I may pose a threat to them. That is ridiculous, to say the least. And not only is it ridiculous that I should assume, or I should have to act in this manner, behave in this manner as a black man because of other people's misconceptions about me, but then it's also disrespectful for you to tell me that I should behave like this, that I should already know this, and that somehow it's my fault for wearing a hood in the rain. Do we not understand how disrespectful that is? I mean, this is literally what we call blaming the victim. And when I say a victim, I don't mean that I've been victimized and I am without power, my power has been stripped from me. But if you research the definition of victim, it's someone who has been infringed upon, someone who has been attacked verbally or physically. I am a victim. You are harassing me, belittling me, profiling me, okay, because of your prior experiences. Now, this is where we have to speak about the other gentleman's comment, where he basically said that the gentleman, the store owner, was somehow justified in the way he approached me because perhaps he had dealt with individuals in a prior instance that dressed, talked, and acted like me and looked my color. So this is also where we have to say that that is stereotyping, textbook stereotyping. This is one of the main instances that keeps the racial animosity so thick and so prevalent. The fact that you, sir, are telling me that somehow this gentleman is justified and somehow this activity is justified and understandable because he may or may not have had a prior negative experience with someone who looks or talks or dresses like me, but it's not me particularly. The fact that you say that is, again, blaming the victim. And I am not a victim, but black people in America have been victimized. Now, I wanted to read those comments so that you can see not only that their particular view, but they are but a portion of the larger views in America. These are some of the things that are told to me. Far too often I'm told that, well, I should have just kept my mouth shut. I should have just put my hands up. I should have just been quiet. I should have just walked out. I should just understand. Someone actually told me that I should understand the mind frame of people that are elderly because I should understand the racist mind frame of some elderly people because there was a racist atmosphere in the society and the time in which they grew up. So this is the time in which they grew up, so I should understand the time in which they grew up and accept that present day. This is ludicrous. This is ridiculous. In the same instance, we could then say that the time that we're growing up right now can be called the Trump era. The era where it's fine to grab someone by the genitals if you have enough money. The era where it's fine to kick someone out if they look differently than you. So should I, when I become older, should my children and my children's friends, should they accept negative speech from me because I grew up in a time where Donald Trump was president? No. It doesn't matter what the era was. It matters about you and personal accountability. So I ask you, persons that's watching, should I, as a black man, behave and tell my children who will grow up to be black men that they should dress a certain way, walk a certain way, talk a certain way, explain themselves at every single turn to anyone that may misunderstand them and stereotype them, bring their children with them so as to explain that they are not associated with the negative actions of other black people? Should I have to do this at every single turn until I die? Is that even reasonable? Is that even realistic? Again, we must understand that you're asking me to behave this way and dress a certain way and talk a certain way because of the misconception and the fears of someone else. This reminds me of a conversation I had with someone at work, a French woman at work, and she actually told me, well, you know, you got to understand, when the people came to Africa, when the Englishmen came to Africa, they must have been quite intimidated, being the fact that the Africans were so large and daunting and scary and strong. And so this is why they enslaved them. Someone actually told me that the people who came to Africa must have been intimidated by the African strength and their natural stature. So this is why they enslaved them. And they tried to use that cause to justify slavery, which is not only laughable, but it's actually, we need to look at the thought pattern behind that ideal. You're telling me that because someone else is intimidated by someone's natural being, that it's then okay to manipulate or try to conquer them because of your because you feel inferior to their natural genetics. This is not acceptable whatsoever. So this is why I speak out. This is why, one of the main reasons why I've created a channel was to create a realm or create a lane for people such as myself who have experienced such occurrences since they were young, to speak out in a professional way, in a logical and righteous way, to expose the atrocities that are happening all across the world, because, or more particularly in America, because we understand that although there are racial divides and tensions all throughout the world, there is a unique set of circumstances that have happened in America that make it very detrimental for a black man, woman, or child to live. So this is why I speak out. I have to make a lane for us. I have to make it possible for us. I have to show that there's a way for us to vent and to actually state our grievances without acting irrationally, aggressively, or belligerent. So this is why I do it. And I'm glad for all of the support that I get. I'm glad for all of the constructive criticism I get. And I'm even glad for all the hate and negative comments that I get, because a lot of the people who leave hateful and negative comments on my page, they can never articulate an actual reason why they're leaving such a comment in the first place, which leads me to believe that maybe I struck a nerve. So, moving forward, we have to understand that a person who's willing to speak out against the hypocrisy of a society should be applauded and should not be attacked. Because when we think about some of the greatest leaders, especially black, when we think of Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, Harriet Tubman, these are maybe the top 4 mentioned black names in America, as far as people who stood for progression and helped the cause of black people to form equality and liberation. But if you think about, say, just the last person I named, Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman at the time, we're only told that she freed, she had an underground railroad to help free the slaves, and then that was the only day that we learned in class. But even in class, when they taught us about Harriet Tubman, they didn't necessarily teach us why it was so important that what she did and why she did it. So if we think about, yes, she freed the slaves, she had an underground railroad, but the fact that she had a necessity to make an underground railroad where she had to break the rules and risk her safety, risk the safety of her family and friends in order to run away from the slave master, because at the time it was legal to own slaves. The fact that she broke the law at the time, and she was a wanted woman. She had a bounty on her head for doing what was right but was also illegal. Now, fast forward almost 200 years, and we see how Harriet Tubman is now being honored to be placed on the $20 bill. So the same person who was in America considered a most wanted fugitive is then later recognized by that same place as being a hero, and then is put, ironically, on the dollar bill. That same dollar bill that they would have used to capture her, or they would have paid someone to capture Harriet Tubman, they're now putting Harriet Tubman's face on that same dollar bill. Do we not see the hypocrisy here? And as a black man or woman, do you not see that you cannot get your flowers while you're alive? You can only get your flowers while you're dead. And so we have to understand that it's time for us to make sacrifices. True warriors understand sacrifice. And you can't be selfish enough to say, oh, well, I'm just going to be quiet just so that I can live nicely. You can't be selfish enough to say, oh, well, I want to be able to see equality and liberation. If you're a true warrior, if you're a true righteous person, then you need to stand up and be willing to do whatever it takes, even if that means sacrifice your very life for the cause. There was video footage of Martin Luther King the day before he died, and he gave a speech in which he said he may not reach the mountaintop with us. He said he knows he will not reach the mountaintop with us to see the very dream that he put into fruition. But he knows that we will reach it, and that's what makes him a great warrior, is because he knew what he faced, but he still spoke against it. And it was the people at the time who were conforming to society who were calling him crazy, hitting him with rocks, and speaking ill on his name. But it wasn't until years and years later that now he has his name etched in stone, and Martin Luther King has a statue of his own. So we have to see how they're not going to reward you for speaking against injustice at the time being. But I'm not looking for myself. I'm looking for the life of my children. I'm looking for my children and my great-grandchildren to see the things that I did on this earth for not just myself, but for their happiness as well. And anyone else, including the English conquerors who stole slaves from Africa, including the people who pillaged this native land of America and brought smallpox and diseases and blankets, you should also be proud of me for speaking against the injustice, because let's just be honest, if you rob, rape, pillage, kill, steal, and are deceitful, you should applaud me for standing up and fighting just as you do. Why am I not being applauded by these racists for standing up for what I believe in the same instance that they felt that they're standing up for what they believe in? Again, that word hypocrisy comes to mind. And of course, I didn't want to take too much of your time, but I wanted to just leave you with something to think about. When I was younger, I wanted to do music. Actually, I can still do music, and I still have a love for music, and music still resonates with me a lot. But I particularly wanted to be a rapper. And I had dreams, literal dreams, where I would feel that I was being interviewed, and dreams where I was accepting awards on stage, accepting Grammy Awards on stage. And it never quite happened. Not saying that it can't happen now, but I've since changed my approach. And what recently came to me was, I believe that I wasn't dreaming big enough. And now this is what I want you to understand. Many times, the Most High, God, or whatever you want to call the creator of all life in front of me, many a times this entity will have a destiny for you, but your destiny for yourself, or what you think you want, will not be the same. So this is where I say, when I wanted a Grammy, I wanted to be in front of all the lights, flashing lights, and have crystal flowing and money and cars and get on the jet with beautiful women. This was the largest that I can dream. But God knew what He had made before. He knew my destiny was much larger than that and had much of a more impact than that. So He didn't give me that dream. He didn't allow that dream to come in fruition, because He had something bigger for me. So now, instead of a Grammy Award, I want a Nobel Peace Prize. And you can call me delusional for saying that, but I know where my dreams lie. I know where my potential is, and I know who my creator is. So am I delusional for wanting a Nobel Peace Prize over a Grammy Award? Or was I delusional for thinking that a Grammy Award was the end-all be-all in life? In either case, you have to understand that God is infinite, and the wisdom that he bestows upon us is sometimes more than we can handle at a time. This is why we always have to submit and be open and willing to learn and accept new things. So with that being said, I love you, and please, I need you to vibrate higher.